Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Dayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Pri Vradikacharya Stotra Satya Sri Simad His Divine Grace Hilaboy Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Nanta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON DBT Founder Acharya's Divine Grace Sri Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Hare Nam Sankirtan Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jaini Thai Gaura Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Taksurandritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Ditam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitam Scha Hai Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisa Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Daivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Param Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Praya Sabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee, All that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Tamashloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyaya Namaha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Surabhyay Namaha Om Surabhyay Namaha Om Surabhyay Namaha Mukhaṁ karoti vāsaram pāṅgum langayate girim yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yatkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. Today we continue with chapter 18 of the 11th canto, entitled A Description of Varnashrama Dharma, beginning from text 34. Aharartham samiheta yuktam tat prana dharanam tattvam vimrishyate tena tad vignaya vimuchyate. Ahararatham samiheta yuktam tat pranadharanam tattvam vimrishyate tena tadvignaya vimuchyate. Ahararatham samiheta yuktam tat pranadharanam tattvam vimrishyate tena tadvignaya vimuchyate. Ahararatham samiheta yuktam tat pranadharanam tattvam vimrishyate tena
Tattvam vimrishyate tena.
Tad vignaya vimuchyate.
Tadvignaya vimuchyate.
Aharatham samiheta.
Aharatam samiheta.
Tat pranadharanam.
Yuktam tat pranadharanam.
Vimrishyate tena.
Tattvam vimishyate tena.
Vinyaya vimuchyate.
Tadignaya vimuchyate.
Aharatham samiheta.
Aharatam samiheta.
Yuktam tat pranadharanam.
Yuktam tat pranadharanam.
Tattvam vimrishyate tena.
Tattvam vimishyate tena.
Tadvignana vimuchyate.
Tadvignaya vimuchyate.
Aharatham samiheta.
Aharatam samiheta.
Yuktam tat pranadharanam.
Yuktam tat pranadharanam.
Tvam vimrishyeta tena.
Tattvam vimishyate tena.
Tadvigyaya vimuchyate.
Tadvignaya vimuchyate. Ahara,
Ahara.
to eat.
To eat.
Artham,
Artham.
in order.
In order.
Samiheta,
Samiheta.
one should endeavor.
One should endeavor.
Yuktam,
Yuktam.
proper.
Proper.
Tat,
Tat.
of the person.
Of the person.
Prana,
Prana.
life force.
Life force.
Dharanam,
Dharanam.
sustaining.
Sustaining.
Tattvam,
Tattvam.
spiritual truth.
Spiritual truth.
Vimrishyate,
Vimrishyate.
is contemplated.
Is contemplated.
Tena,
Tena.
by that strength of the mind,
By the strength of the mind.
senses,
Senses.
and life air.
And life air.
Tat,
Tat.
that truth.
That truth.
Vignaya,
Vignaya.
understanding.
Understanding.
Vimuchyate,
Vimuchyate.
one is liberated.
One is liberated.
Translation and purport by disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. If required, one should endeavor to get sufficient foodstuffs because it is always necessary and proper to maintain one's health. When the senses, mind, and life air are fit, one can contemplate a spiritual truth, and by understanding the truth, one is liberated. Kind of repeat after me. If required, one should endeavor to get sufficient foodstuffs because it is always necessary and proper to maintain one's health. When the senses, mind and life air are fit, one can contemplate spiritual truth, and by understanding the truth, one is liberated. Purport. If foodstuffs do not come automatically or by token begging, then one should endeavor to keep body and soul together so that one's spiritual program will not be disturbed. And normally those who are endeavoring in spiritual life cannot maintain steady concentration on the truth if their mind and body are weakened by under-eating. On the other hand, extravagant consumption of food is a great impediment for spiritual advancement and should be given up. The word aharartham in this verse indicates eating only to keep oneself fit for spiritual advancement. and does not justify unnecessary collecting or warehousing of so-called alms. If one collects more than necessary for one's spiritual program, the surplus becomes a heavy weight that drags one down to the material platform. Translation again. If required, one should endeavor to get sufficient foodstuffs, because it is always necessary and proper to maintain one's health. When the senses, mind, and life air are fit, one can contemplate spiritual truth, and by understanding the truth, one is liberated. So the subject matter of how to maintain the body, how to keep good health, not for the prime purpose of being healthy, but for the prime purpose of being able to concentrate and cultivate the subject matter of the absolute truth. So generally, it is a responsibility. If we look at the divisions in society, brahmacharis are not supposed to think very much about, they're not engaged in, generally, in the growing food. That is primarily the responsibility of householders. We read before how actually the householders have a very big responsibility because they're meant to maintain the brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. So 1/4 of the population is meant to maintain 3/4 of the population. That's quite a lot, actually. So the idea is that if one is actually serious about practicing spiritual life, then he will learn to be satisfied with generally what comes of its own accord, and he will try to basically meet the basic necessities of the body. Just like in one verse in the Bhagavatam, it mentions if one is very, very hungry and there's no food, by drinking water, it can, for some time, substitute, quench that hunger that is there. Definitely, one should avoid what is commonplace in the world today, and it has actually developed as a global problem: obesity. There are people dying actually because they are overweight. It's very taxing on the heart. The heart becomes pressured by people who are overweight, and it's just not healthy. So Prabhupada mentioned many times, eating purpose for eating is to keep body and soul together for the primary purpose of practicing Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada did recognize and explain also that if people are not having the minimum for maintaining their body, how they can relate or understand about spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada also mentioned that his Guru Maharaj mentioned that, or expressed that he didn't appreciate very much disciples who were too fat. I don't see anyone here who's having that problem. But of course, it's not, we should be careful also, it's not that everyone who is obese is because he's a voracious eater. Some people, some people have some kind of physical condition, health issue that causes them, even though they eat very less or try to eat less and whatnot. So some endeavor should be there. This is mentioned here for providing for the basic needs and necessities of the body, but it should not, as is the case in modern society, it's like the main preoccupation and meditation without any thought for actually developing spiritual life. So, but we know, of course, that in our Krishna consciousness, food, prasadam, is very. Prabhupada, in the early days, as we have all heard, he himself would actually be, in the very, very early days, he would be cooking himself. He would be himself serving the prasadam. And the first Sunday feast, because Prabhupada in the very, very early days started, it was Prabhupada's idea. On Sunday, you should have a love feast. And I think the first love feast, because everyone was very neophyte, Prabhupada himself had to clean up after. It's like you cook, you serve, and you clean up. That was Prabhupada's program initially. He was ready to do all of these things just to, in this way he was serving, isn't it? He was serving these new people who had not yet taken seriously to spiritual life, and so he demonstrated in that way. And he would encourage new people, new devotees, to eat a lot. I read somewhere how, I think it must have been 26 Second Avenue, that people in America, well, especially compared to India, are like tall, big body, right? So Prabhupada was used to encourage people. Well, that's a Vedic culture also. Take more, do it more. That's why there's a whole science in cooking, of course, prasadam, and there's a whole science in serving prasadam. It's meant to be like a competition between the one who's serving and the one who's taking. The one who's serving is supposed to, again, try, just like whenever Nara Hari serves me, it's like, because one cannot only just serve one spoonful. You have to add another one. But the thing is, if the person serving you serves you like a big first spoonful, then you have to really check out the second one so that it's not double. Anyways, there are. So anyways, one time Prabhupada was serving chapatis, because in the West, people like bread, and they took very much to chapatis. And Prabhupada was serving this one particular boy, new boy, a big-bodied boy, and he liked prasadam. Yeah, most people like prasadam from the beginning, a few. And anyways, Prabhupada ended up serving him, I think it was like 24 chapatis. I mean, he must have been quite healthy, and yeah. So in the beginning, that is there, and then when we happen to read the nectar of instruction, Vaso Vegam Manasakam, Jiva Vegam, or the urge of the tongue, we have to. So there's initially, at some point, one comes to understand in the beginning of Krishna consciousness that although prasadam, of course, prasadam is meant to be very nicely prepared and very tasty because it's being offered to Krishna. But we should regulate our eating, and therefore there are fixed times to eat certain types of food, etc. The whole. Yeah. So eating is important. The health. I mean, Prabhupada. I think. There was a whole big question regarding, is it better to attend Bhagavatam class or reading? Can I read, or should I attend? And then, or where do you prioritize? Your priority in terms of chanting, in terms of reading, in terms of attending class, because sometimes devotees would not attend class because they kind of worked it out that it's, no, I have to chant my rounds. But Prabhupada established, and of course, health is there. So there's one note that was written by Prabhupada where he put it in order. You saw that in the. And what's the first one? Health. Yeah. That one.
Those devotees there were going so much out for Nagar Sankirtan and distribution that day.
Missing the Bhagavatam class.
Not their health was very.
Oh, health had deteriorated. Yeah, one time Prabhupada was giving a class somewhere, and then he was hearing a lot of devotees like coughing. I mean, and then so for about half an hour in the class, he just talked about health.
Because they in the cold, they will go out and play mridanga and start bleeding.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that personally also, because in the West, in the winter time, I mean, it's freezing cold. Still, devotees would go out. I mean, like in Montreal, it's like snow for so many months of the year. Still, devotees go out, and your cartels are like freezing cold. And whoever plays the mridanga, well, they sometimes they put on gloves. Yeah. With open thing or whatever. Anyway. So although we are not the body, we should maintain the body. We should look after the body so that it is healthy, because unless our body is healthy, we cannot function properly, especially we cannot concentrate. So therefore, that is also the reason why Srila Prabhupada, like it was right here in Mayapur, when he saw, he was hearing some noise one day, I think right after his prasadam, and it was like dogs were barking and whatnot, and so he went to the balcony and he personally saw how some young children were trying to get some food that was thrown or something, and fighting with the dogs. And so then that's when Prabhupada instituted his Food for Life program, that no one within, 10-kilometer or 10-mile radius of a temple, at least here in Mayapur, it should be there for every temple. So food distribution, prasadam distribution, which is a major important aspect of Krishna consciousness, to the point that I don't know if it's, I think Prabhupada mentions, it's in the, it's right there actually in the, speaking about Varnasrama, that we are, what is it, something like a food or kitchen religion or something. Kitchen religion, yeah. I mean, food is important. Of course, the focus here is in terms of the body and keeping health, but food is important also in terms of the arrangement of society. I mean, in the context, in the larger context of Varnasrama, because Prabhupada emphasized, right, first is food. And Prabhupada, when Prabhupada would say first is food, he had a whole kind of, global view on that. When one begins to understand that, we could say, larger view or global view, then it makes a lot of sense. Today, majority of people are in a situation of dependency, very dangerous food that is coming from very far away most of the time. And anyway, one of the principles in the Vedic culture is that one should eat local food, isn't it? So many things that are unknown in modern day society, and because we don't follow the proper ways of doing things, therefore we create all kinds of very complicated situations. So main point is, in other words, we should do things in such a way, including growing food, growing proper food, good food, healthy food, for the primary purpose of facilitating our our endeavor to become Krishna conscious, to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Okay. Text number 3.5. Okay. We occasionally get these sentences that have like one
Actually,
word.
many are like that, Guru Maharaj, but they split it and make it into 2-3 lines.
Yeah, but many times it's not split.
Yeah.
And so it's like then it becomes like a mouthful, really a mouthful. Okay, let's go here. This is text 35. Yadrichayopapanam
Yadrachayopapannanam
ajats chestam utaparam
Adyacheshtam Mutaparam
tatha vasas tatha shayam
Tathavasas Shayam
tatha vasas tatha shayam
Tathavasas Shayam
praptam bhajan munihi.
Praptam Bhajet Muni.
Translation and purport: a sage should accept the food, clothing, and bedding, be they of excellent or inferior quality, that come of their own accord. Very important principle. Purport: sometimes excellent, sumptuous food will come without endeavor, and at other times tasteless food appears. A sage should not become happily excited when a sumptuous plate is brought to him, nor should he angrily refuse ordinary food that comes of its own accord. If no food comes at all, as mentioned in the previous verse, one must endeavor to avoid starvation. From these verses, it appears that even a saintly sage must have a good dose of common sense. So this, principle of in spiritual life, we must learn to adopt and accept things as they come. You know, sometimes we'll meet people who are very friendly, towards us. Other times we'll meet people who, for no apparent reason, are very insulting or, just don't like us. Well, the idea is that, there's all kinds of factors at play, and therefore one should avoid becoming, here, of course, in the context of food, becoming lusty after sumptuous food, and should also not become overly disturbed if sometimes the cook puts too much salt in the preparation or whatever. Or we can recall reading also from the instructions of Narada Muni, something that doesn't happen very often in our Hare Krishna temples, but traditionally when Gurukul boys would live with the spiritual master, then they would only come when called upon to sit to take prasadam. And if for some reason or other one was forgotten or not called, then he would have to fast for that meal. That doesn't happen very much because we don't have that kind of situation. So it means that for our bodily necessities, we should not become overly disturbed. At the same time, we should also make some endeavor to at least maintain the body, basically. Yeah. Okay. Text 36. Shocham asamanam snanam
Shaucham vachamanam snanam
natu chodanaya charat
madhu shodhanaya chare
anyam zacha niyaman gnani
anyamscha niyamagyani
yathaham lilayeshvaraha.
yathaham lilayeshwarah.
Translation and purport: just as I, the Supreme Lord, excuse me, execute regular duties by my own free will, similarly, one who has realized knowledge of me should maintain general cleanliness, purify his hands with water, take bath, and execute other regulative duties not by force, but by his own free will. Purport: when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to the material world, he generally observes the Vedic regulative duties to set a proper example for mankind. The Lord acts by his own free will, since no one can oblige, force, or impel the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the Jnani, or self-realized soul, is fixed on the spiritual platform beyond the material body and should therefore execute the regulative duties in relation to the material body by his own free will and not as a servant of the rules and regulations. A self-realized soul is a servant of Lord Krishna and not of rules and regulations. Nevertheless, a transcendentalist strictly complies with regular duties for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. In other words, one who is advanced in loving devotional service to Lord Krishna spontaneously moves according to the will of the Supreme. One who is perfectly situated in a spiritual realization cannot become a servant of the material body or of rules and regulations concerning the material body. However, this verse and other similar statements in Vedic scriptures should not be ignorantly misinterpreted to justify immoral, whimsical behavior. Lord Krishna is discussing the Paramahamsa stage of life, and those who are attached to the material body have nothing to do with this Paramahamsa stage, nor should they exploit its unique privilege and status. So, yeah, unless one is avadut, avaduts will behave differently. But otherwise, even generally those, I mean, you know, our prime example, of course, is Srila Prabhupada. He was a Paramahamsa, and you know, he followed the basic etiquettes in terms of eating, in terms of dressing, in terms of interacting with people, and he wanted that his disciples be ideal gentlemen, isn't it? Nice, you know, how to nicely interact with people, how to maintain our Prabhupada had a dress code for the devotees. Matter of fact, he told devotees that you can't remain in Krishna consciousness if you don't shave your head minimum once a month. Prabhupada did not like the devotees again grow their hair, and often he mentioned how growing hair you'll end up again becoming hippie-like. So Prabhupada, I think in one purport mentions how devotees, the dress of devotees, this should become the fashion. Just like in modern day society, they have, we were discussing the other day, constantly changing dress. But so Prabhupada really wanted that this dress, devotee dress, and tilak and sikha and dhoti, of course he also encouraged that devotees who are grihastas, they can have different, I mean their dhoti is generally is white, but their kurta can be different color. And but sometimes we see people with like maybe too flashy kind of color. Even dhoti, sometimes people wear different color. But the standard is like white for grihastas, white dhoti, and then the kurta can be of different color, like that. and of course, Prabhupada was always very much stressing the need for cleanliness. I mean, we cannot imagine how things were during Prabhupada's time in regards to temples. Prabhupada expected that not only the altar or the kitchen be neat and clean, but every nook and corner. One time, I think in New York, maybe Los Angeles, or some other temple possibly. Because Prabhupada, whenever he would visit a temple, he would walk around to see, especially for the new place. And this time, you know, devotees, of course, would generally know a little bit ahead of time when Prabhupada would be coming. And this particular time, devotees maybe possibly might have had less time. 7 o'clock, they really they start working early. Here in Bengal, the mode of passion kicks in at 7 o'clock. So anyways, the devotees, they had like a first floor and I think a second floor, and there was one attic. And so, you know, they knew Prabhupada was coming. So, you know, normally in those days, they would repaint the whole place, you know. So Prabhupada came, and the temple president started showing Prabhupada around. And what they had done is that there were a lot of like loose ends or things, you know.
Ants.
Huh?
Ants or ants?
Not ants. there were a lot of different things that that they just threw somewhere, like in a closet or some attic or something, and they figured Prabhupada was, that, then Prabhupada started walking around, and he have a second floor. Okay, the second floor, that's where the attic was. And then at one point, Prabhupada sees that particular door, and he opens that door, and it was like a total mess, The rest of the house was like clean, neat, everything. So Prabhupada chastised them like anything, Why is like this? Prabhupada expected, it's like we chant every day, isn't it? Mandira Marjanam, but it's not only keeping the temple room. And in those days also, I remember there was one devotee assigned every day. That was his like seva every day, just to clean. Clean the door every day, clean the curtains, clean everything. So that actually the whole, it was like, you could say, practically like immaculate. Prabhupada was of that standard. And when you visit some of the older temples, where was I? I think in Germany. In Germany, I forget, it's where they had like BBT, I think many years back. Maybe still connected also, I forget. But very nice temple and large deities. And it reminded me of those early days, because that was the standard. Because that is cleanliness, as we have heard so many times, is next to godliness. So okay, any comments or thoughts, questions? Okay, we'll close here. Jai Grantaraj Bhagavatam Ki Jai Sri Prabhupada Ki. These guys started even before 7 o'clock, and I'm sure our neighbors